Welcome to Authentic Moments. Listen in as we engage in conversations about a range of topics surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion. These conversations are meant to educate, inform, and feed curious minds, all part of how Cone Health is right here with
Hi,
you.
I'm your host, Niketa Greene, and on this episode, we are discussing the challenges and the advantages of a multi generational workplace. So, we want to create a dialogue about strategies for bridging gaps among generations in the workplace and demystify. So, let me introduce you to our guest today. We have Alex Tomowski, Sarah McGuire, and Mayisa Mitchell. So, can each of you, let's start with you, Alex, can you tell us what you do?
Yes, hello. So my name is Alex Tomolsky. I work at Cone Health. Guess represent the millennials group as well for today. Um, but for my job and profession, I work with our enterprise portfolio management office. My focus is as a portfolio analyst. So really, that's for a centric view for all of Cone Health in regards to projects. And then additionally, outside of that, also work with our young professionals team, which is I think is more of what has drawn the interest for me. I don't think we'll be talking about projects today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. My name's Sarah McGuire, and I am the Director of Synergy Young Professionals at Action Greensboro. And we are a network for and by young professionals here in Greensboro. We offer opportunities for personal and professional development and connections to the community. I myself am solidly a millennial. But through my work at Action Greensboro, I get to interact with a lot of millennials, more and more Gen Z and some Gen X as well. So get a good mix of all of them participating in Synergy's opportunities.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Mayisa Mitchell. I am the Student Engagement and Events Manager at Campus Greensboro. My role consists mostly of recruiting students for our internship program, which is our flagship program. And so I interact mostly with Gen Z because of that, but I am a millennial.
So we have experts is the point. We have experts here. So thank you all again for joining us to have this conversation. So I found something really interesting. I found out that about 35% of workers in the labor force today are Generation Millennials, and Gen Z will make up about 30% by 2030. So right around the corner. So we definitely have a bona fide multi-generational workplace today. So I would love to start just hearing from each of you about what do you think are the advantages of having a diverse workforce that ranges from some baby boomers all the way to Gen Z?
Absolutely. I think the first thing I thought of is the idea of diversity of thought. Coming from different generations, we kind of were brought up different ways and can bring all of that to the workplace to work on projects and think about things differently, adjust from what has been done before. And I think also the opportunity to learn from each other. So, someone that is a baby boomer may be able to teach a Gen Z how to send a letter, and vice versa. A Gen Z may be able to teach someone how to utilize social media. So, I think those are some really good things: diversity of thought and cross generational mentoring.
I'll just add to that just a little bit. I think that creativity, especially when it comes to strategies for problem solving, is a really big piece of advantage of having diverse generations within the workforce. I also think that people's personal and professional networks that they pull in from the different generations that they represent is super important. I'm just thinking about from my perspective at Synergy, we collaborate a lot and depend a lot on support from community partners. And when we have members who are representing different generations, they're also connecting to different businesses and different opportunities in the community, and then bringing that to Synergy so that we can essentially be welcoming to everyone. So I think that diversity in within networks is really important too.
Sarah, through Action Greensboro with Synergy, you're doing a lot of networking opportunities. You're providing a lot of workshops for people who who are in the workforce. And I know that some of those topics cover that. And certainly, Maisa, you're working directly with college students who are interning in the workplace. So I can imagine that you've heard some good things. So what are some of the stereotypes and challenges that Gen Z and millennials talk about in the workplace?
I'll just jump in and say that as a millennial myself, and working with a lot of millennials, two things really come to mind. And one is kind of the stereotype that millennials are lazy, which is just simply not true. I myself don't, I feel like I have a pretty solid work ethic, and I can vouch for everyone else on this call too. I think they do as well. But even more than that, I think the stereotype that has really worked against millennials and will continue into Gen Z is this notion that we are inexperienced. When in fact, millennials are approaching 30 or are in their 30s and sometimes approaching their 40s. And so, I'm a millennial, but I have a decade of work experience. And so I think that's something, it's just a kind of a mindset, a phrase that people throw out. Oh, they're a millennial. They don't have the experience. When in fact, um, time moves on and we are all getting older and we are all experiencing more things. And I think Gen Z will, they're moving into the workforce, Niketa, as you said, at an alarming rate. So they will be facing the same or similar stereotypes. And so those are kind of the two big ones that I've heard, but I'm sure that Mayitha can chime in a little bit more specifically to Gen Z anyway.
Yeah, the part I thought of initially was communication and the means of communication. I think as millennials, we're kind of we were born up in the birthplace of this modern technology that we have now. And so we understand how to do all of the things because of that. Whereas Gen Z has been brought up with this technology all their lives. It's been years ahead of what we had in, middle school or high school, even in college. And so simple things like, utilize an email, which is something that at this point is pretty normal for a millennial, is something that Gen Z is not really with. And as a result of that, at Campus Greensboro, we've started utilizing a texting service so that we can get information to them a lot quicker, because we know that they will not check their emails on a regular basis enough for us to get the information that we need to them. So I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing that they communicate differently, but definitely something to adapt to in the workplace.
At the end of the day, what we're talking about is just navigating and celebrating that we all have different experiences that we bring and different texture, right, that we bring into the workplace. So, Alex, you work here at Cone. It is most definitely a multi-generational workplace. Do you have advice for other companies that want to create an inclusive multi-generational workplace? What advice would you offer?
Yeah. So what comes to mind for me is, and this is so stereotypical, is just that recognition of work. I actually heard it from others. It's within that recognition. For me, I want to work for the best, and so if the company and Cone being well established in healthcare, I know that I work for the best team. It's not, and I know that my attributes and skills that I'm bringing to the table is just one of, Nikita, what are we at now? 12,000 strong
Yeah.
employees here. Um, but to me, for more fun fact, I interned with Cone right when I got out of school at UNC Greensboro. I never left. I always try and think like what has kept me here, and again that recognition and knowing that I am working for one of the best in the within our greater Triad area. Um, and giving the recognitions around the way, I think you guys can see probably some of the things in the back. There's different awards, but things that honestly, I heard it earlier. We all work hard. I've earned these, and it's great being recognized, and that's what really has helped keep me personally here at Cone.
I think companies who meet employees where they are, and that means not only from a generational perspective, but all of the other aspects of diversity that an employee may bring to the table is really important. And I don't just mean racial diversity, I mean diversity in your living situation, like especially during the pandemic. Working parents, that was a whole new world opened up. And so I think meeting employees where they are as far as work style, flexibility, again, communication is huge. So I think just understanding your workforce, your employees, and trying to accommodate them so that they can bring their whole selves to work. And just like Alex said, everybody wants to work for the best. And so when companies can offer that flexibility and those accommodations, that does make it feel like you're working for the best.
I definitely agree with that, and would add on that, especially with Gen Z coming up, in the midst of recessions and pandemics and things like that, they're very often looking for security. And it goes back to both Sarah and Alex's point about the recognition, about meeting people where they are, but knowing that they can stay in a place for a while and knowing that that company is already established is something that Gen Z is looking for a lot more than I think millennials were. I think millennials had a lot more entrepreneurial spirit and often have gone into startups and even starting their own companies. But I think Gen Z is really going to be looking for those companies that are already established and can provide them the things that they're looking for.
Perfect. And when I think about what each of you said, starting with Alex about recognition, and even, merging that kind of with what you said, Sarah, it's not just recognizing the contribution that you make at work, that you work hard and you're doing a good job, but also recognizing the uniqueness and your identity that you bring to work. And all of that makes all of our generations in an inclusive workplace feel secure. To your point, Maisa. So I love that. I love the way all of that synergize. So one final thought, if you will put on your advocate hat for me, and tell. I would love to hear from each of you. What do you want our listeners, leaders, managers, employers to know about the strength of Gen Z and millennials in the workplace?
I think I'll go back to one thing that you just said, word that you just said, and that was uniqueness. I think that each generation brings unique qualities to the workforce. The entrepreneurial spirit that Maisa just mentioned. There have definitely, I can't even count the number of millennials that I know that have a side hustle outside of their main job. So that curiosity that millennials have, I think that can be a huge advantage in the workforce. And then Gen Z, I am getting to know Gen Z more and more with each year that goes by at Synergy as they enter the workforce. And I think that they're like, this may be wrong, Maisa, and you correct me, but like just their playfulness and their like curiosity about like the workforce and the way that we view things and the way that we do things is, and that may just be, fresh green eyes in a workforce. And maybe that happens with every generation as they kind of move from education into workforce. But I think that kind of like fresh perspective is something that should really be harnessed and used for the good of a workplace.
I think to Sarah's point earlier, that idea that folks are inexperienced even when they come into a workplace or even after they've been in a workplace for 5 years is really prevalent. And there is more than just work experience to provide an opportunity for really great problem solving or really great innovation in ideas. And so when I work with my Gen Z students and for Campus Greensboro, I tell them, put on your resume all of the experience that you have, your volunteer experience, working with your church, your student organizations, all of those sorts of things, because all of that culminates into you bringing extraness into the workplace. And I think even to Sarah's point, uniqueness into the workplace. So I think employers valuing more than just the years of work experience is going to be really, really crucial going into Gen Z entering the workplace.
Definitely great advice from all of you. I think as you were sharing, gave us tips, too, things to think about, what we can all do to be a lot more inclusive and celebrate the uniqueness that we have. This is an incredible time in our labor force, I think, with having so many different generations represented. There is so much cross-cultural things we can learn, cross-generational things we can learn from each other. So what a benefit. I want to thank you, each of you, for everything that you brought today. I think that our listeners will really appreciate your expertise and your knowledge and everything that you shared with us today. So thank you to Alex, to Sarah, and Maisa. Thank you so much for being a part of Authentic Moments and for helping us bridge the gap among our generations.
Thank you for listening to Authentic Moments. To hear more episodes and receive information about our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at Cone Health, click the link to visit our SharePoint site.